You thought I'd fall? You don't know how I rise.
The champagne flute in my hand was worth more than most people made in a day, but it tasted like betrayal. I stood in the corner of Lana's new law firm, watching her work the room like she owned it, which technically she did. The industrial chic space buzzed with the city's elite, all sharp suits and sharper tongues, celebrating the grand opening of Morrison and Associates. I shouldn't have been late. Honestly, I shouldn't have come at all. There he is! Lana's voice cut through the crowd like a blade. Everyone, meet my husband, Jake. He's the one with oil under his fingernails. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not the good kind. The kind that makes your skin crawl and your fists clench. I forced a smile and raised my glass, playing along with whatever game this was. Guilty as charged, I said, looking down at my hands. I'd scrub them raw, but you never really get the grease out. 20 years of restoring classic cars will do that to you. Lana glided over in her black cocktail dress, the one I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. Her blonde hair was pulled back in that severe style she'd adopted since starting the firm. Everything about her had gotten sharper, colder. Jake owns a little auto shop, she announced to the circle of lawyers and judges surrounding us. Very blue collar. The way she said it made it sound like a disease. Actually, it's a restoration business, I corrected, keeping my voice level. We specialize in classic American muscle cars. Just finished a 1977 Mustang Fastback that sold for 80 grand. How quaint, said a thin man in an expensive suit. I recognized him, Joel Patterson, one of Lana's new partners. We'd gone to high school together back when he was a pimply kid who got stuffed in lockers. Amazing what a law degree and daddy's money could do for a person. Jake, darling, Lana said, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. Could you be a lamb and get me another drink? The good champagne, not whatever swill you're drinking. I looked down at my glass. It was the same champagne everyone else was drinking. Sure thing, honey. As I walked to the bar, I caught fragments of conversation. My name kept coming up, always followed by snickers. Can you believe she married him? What was she thinking? He doesn't belong here. They weren't wrong. I didn't belong here, among these sharks in $1,000 suits. I belonged in my shop, with my hands deep in an engine, solving problems that made sense. Problems you could fix with the right tools and enough patience. The bartender, a kid who couldn't have been more than 25, looked at me with barely concealed pity. What can I get you, sir? 2 glasses of your best champagne, I said, and make them doubles. He raised an eyebrow but complied. As he poured, I noticed a commotion near the entrance. A man had arrived, tall, athletic, with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. He moved through the crowd like a celebrity, shaking hands and accepting congratulations. That's when I saw Lana's face light up in a way it hadn't for me in months. Miles, she called out, practically bouncing on her toes. Everyone, this is Miles Brennan, our business consultant. He's been absolutely instrumental in getting the firm off the ground. Miles Brennan. I'd heard the name before, usually when Lana was explaining why she'd be working late again. He was younger than me, maybe 35, with the build of someone who'd played college football and never let himself go soft. His suit probably cost more than my truck. I watched as Lana introduced him around the room, her hand lingering on his arm just a little too long. The way she looked at him, the way she laughed at his jokes, it was like watching a stranger wear my wife's face. Quite a party, said a voice behind me. I turned to see Veronica Walsh, Lana's best friend and business partner. She was holding a martini and wearing a smirk that didn't reach her eyes. Yeah, I said, really something. You know, Jake, I have to admire your dedication, she said, taking a sip of her drink. Coming here, supporting Lana's dream, even though what? Her smirk widened. Even though you must know this is the beginning of the end. Before I could ask what she meant, Lana's voice rang out across the room again. Everyone, could I have your attention, please? She was standing on a small platform near the windows, miles beside her. I have an announcement to make. The room fell silent. I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. As you know, starting this firm has been a dream of mine for years. It represents a new chapter in my life, a chance to build something meaningful and lasting. She paused, her eyes finding mine across the room, which is why it seems appropriate that tonight also marks another new beginning. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. Jake, honey, could you come up here? Every eye in the room turned to me. I felt like an animal in a trap, but what choice did I have? I walked through the crowd, their whispers following me like a funeral procession. As I said, tonight is about new beginnings, Lana continued when I reached the platform. And sometimes, to build something new, you have to tear down what's old and broken. She held out the envelope. The first case for Morrison and Associates is going to be very personal. Jake, I'm filing for divorce. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. I stared at the envelope, my mind struggling to process what was happening. She was divorcing me. In public. At her own party. In front of half the city. Lana, I said quietly, what are you doing? What I should have done years ago, she replied, her voice carrying across the silent room. I'm choosing my future over my past. I looked at the envelope in her hand, then at her face, then at Miles standing behind her like some kind of conquering hero. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. How long? I asked. What? How long have you been screwing him? The room went dead silent. Lana's face went white, then red. Jake, you're making a scene. I'm making a scene? I laughed and it came out harsh and bitter. Lady, you just served me divorce papers at your office party. I think the scene was already made. I took the envelope from her hand, our fingers touching for what I somehow knew would be the last time. You know what, Lana? You're right. This is a new beginning. I turned to face the crowd of lawyers and judges and social climbers, all of them staring at me like I was a zoo animal. Congratulations to the happy couple, I said, raising my champagne glass toward Lana and Miles. May you get exactly what you deserve. I downed the champagne in one gulp, set the glass on the nearest table, and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted before me like I was contagious. At the door, I turned back one last time. Lana was still on the platform, her perfect facade cracking just enough to show the panic underneath. Miles had his hand on her shoulder, playing the supportive boyfriend. Veronica was watching me with that same knowing smirk. Oh, and Lana, I called out, you might want to check your bank accounts. I canceled all the credit cards about an hour ago, and that $20 million I invested in your firm, consider it a loan, with interest. My lawyer will be in touch. The last thing I saw, before the elevator doors closed, was Lana's face going from red to white to green. Her phone already buzzing with what I knew would be hundreds of missed calls from creditors and investors. 20 years of marriage, and this is how it ends. Not with a quiet conversation over coffee, but with public humiliation and lawyers and a room full of strangers treating my pain like entertainment. Well, if they wanted a show, I was just getting started. The next morning hit me like a freight train made of regret and instant coffee. I sat in my office at the shop, surrounded by invoices and parts catalogs, trying to pretend my world hadn't imploded 12 hours earlier. The 19N Camaro S in Bay 3 needed a new transmission. The 19 South 5 Mustang in Bay 1 was waiting on custom headers, and my marriage was deader than the engine block I'd pulled yesterday. Boss? Tommy, my lead mechanic, stuck his head through the office door. You okay? You look like heck. Feel like it too, I said, not looking up from the paperwork I wasn't actually reading. What do you need? Mrs. Patterson is here about her husband's Corvette. Says it's urgent. I sighed. Mrs. Patterson, Joel's wife. The same Joel who'd been smirking at me last night while my marriage fell apart for everyone's entertainment. Perfect. Send her in. Mrs. Patterson swept into my office like she owned the place. She was one of those women who'd married money and wore it like armor. Designer everything, perfect hair, the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. Jake, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk without being invited. I heard about last night. I'm so sorry. Are you? Her smile faltered for just a moment. Of course I am. Divorce is always difficult, especially when it's served up as dinner theater. She had the grace to look uncomfortable. Yes, well, Lana always did have a flair for the dramatic. What can I do for you, Mrs. Patterson? It's about Joel's Corvette. The 1963 split window. We need it back. I leaned back in my chair. Joel's Corvette had been in my shop for 3 months. It was a complete frame-off restoration, the kind of job that took time and cost serious money. We were about halfway through, maybe 60 grand in parts and labor so far. It's not done, I said. Won't be for another 2 months, minimum. That's the thing, she said, fidgeting with her purse. We need it back as is. Today. Mrs. Patterson, that car's in pieces. The engine's torn down, the body's in primer, the interior's completely out. It's not even a car right now, it's just expensive parts. We'll pay for the work you've done so far, of course. I studied her face. There was something she wasn't telling me. Why the rush? Does it matter? It's our car. It matters because I've got 60 grand in parts and labor invested in that car, and if you take it now, you're basically throwing that money away. She stood up abruptly. Just prepare the bill, Jake. We'll pick it up this afternoon. After she left, I sat there trying to figure out what that was about. Then my phone rang. Jake's Restorations. Jake, it's Mike Chen. Mike owned Chen's Auto Body. Did a lot of paint work for me. Good guy, fair prices, never any drama. Hey, Mike, what's up? Listen, I hate to do this, but I can't take any more jobs from you for a while. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What do you mean? My wife heard about what happened last night. She thinks maybe we shouldn't be associated with your business right now. Mike, we've been working together for 10 years. I know, and I'm sorry. It's just this whole thing with your wife and that lawyer guy, it's got people talking. Bad for business, you know? After Mike hung up, the phone rang 2 more times. First, it was my parts supplier, suddenly needing payment up front for future orders. Then it was the bank, asking about the status of my business loan. By noon, I understood what was happening. In a town this size, reputation was everything, and mine was now radioactive. I was closing up for lunch when Ray Kowalski pulled into the parking lot in his beat-up pickup truck. Ray owned a boxing gym downtown, the kind of place where cops and firefighters and guys like me went to hit things until the world made sense again. We'd been friends since high school, back when we were both too dumb to know we were poor. Heard you had an interesting evening, he said, climbing out of his truck. Word travels fast. Faster when it's that entertaining. He lit a cigarette, offered me one. I quit years ago, but today seemed like a good day to make an exception. So what's the damage? He asked. Lost 3 clients this morning. Parts supplier wants cash up front. Bank's asking questions about my loan. Ouch! And my wife's screwing some ex-jock pretty boy who probably can't change his own oil. Ray nodded like this was all perfectly reasonable. You know what your problem is? Enlighten me. You played defense. She threw the first punch, and you just stood there and took it. What was I supposed to do? Make a scene? Jake, she served you divorce papers in front of half the city. The scene was already made. He took a long drag of his cigarette. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Before I could answer, a silver BMW pulled into the parking lot. Miles Brennan got out, looking like he'd stepped off the cover of GQ magazine. He walked over to us with the kind of swagger that made me want to hit something. Jake Morrison, he said, extending his hand. Miles Brennan, I think we should talk. I looked at his hand but didn't take it. About what? About making this whole situation easier for everyone involved. Ray snorted. This ought to be good. Miles ignored him, focusing on me. Look, I know last night was awkward, but there's no reason this has to get ugly. Lana and I were trying to build something here. Something important. On the ashes of my marriage. Your marriage was over long before I came along, he said, and there was something almost pitying in his voice. Lana needs someone who can match her ambition. Someone who understands the world she's trying to build. Someone with money, you mean? Someone with vision. He gestured around at my shop, and the dismissal was clear. This is fine for what it is, but Lana's playing in a different league now. I felt Ray tense beside me, but I held up a hand. What exactly are you proposing? Sign the papers. Don't contest the divorce. Let her keep the house, the investments, the retirement accounts. In exchange, I'll make sure you get enough to keep this place running. How generous. I'm trying to be reasonable here. You could fight it, sure, but that's just going to cost everyone time and money. And frankly, Jake, you can't afford a legal battle with Morrison and Associates. He was right about that. Lana's new firm had resources I couldn't match. They could drag things out for years, bleed me dry with legal fees while I watched my business collapse. I'll think about it, I said. Miles smiled, the kind of smile that said he'd already won. Don't think too long. Lana's patience has limits. He got back in his BMW and drove off, leaving Ray and me standing in the parking lot. What a piece of crap, Ray said. Yeah, so what are you really gonna do? I flicked my cigarette into the street and watched it smolder. I'm gonna finish that Corvette. That's your big plan? Fix Joel Patterson's car. Ray, you remember what you used to tell me when we were boxing about not swinging wild when you're angry? Yeah, keep your guard up, wait for your opening, then make it count. That's what I'm going to do. I looked at the shop, at the cars waiting to be restored, at the life I'd built with my own hands. But first, I need to make some phone calls. That night, I sat in my empty house. Lana had moved out weeks ago, I realize now, and opened my laptop. Time to do some research on Miles Brennan, business consultant extraordinaire. What I found was very interesting indeed. 3 days of digging through public records, business filings, and social media had given me a clearer picture of Miles Brennan. The man was a professional charmer, the kind of consultant who specialized in helping businesses optimize their operational efficiency, which, as far as I could tell, meant finding creative ways to screw over employees and customers. His LinkedIn profile was a masterpiece of corporate BS, synergistic solutions, paradigm shifts, disruptive innovation, the kind of language that said everything and nothing at the same time. But the interesting stuff was in the details. 3 companies he'd consulted for in the past 5 years had gone under within 18 months of hiring him. Another 2 had been hit with lawsuits from former employees claiming wrongful termination. And his last girlfriend, a real estate agent named Jennifer Walsh, had filed a restraining order against him 6 months ago. I was making notes when my phone rang. Emmy, my 16-year-old daughter. Dad, can we talk? Of course, sweetheart. What's up? It's about Mom and everything. Can I come over? 20 minutes later, Emmy was sitting in my kitchen, picking at the pizza I'd ordered. She looked like her mother. Blonde hair, blue eyes, that stubborn chin. But she had my sense of humor and, unfortunately, my temper. School sucks, she said without preamble. Because of the divorce? Because everyone's talking about it. Madison Parker's mom was at the party. She filmed the whole thing and posted it on Facebook. I'm basically a meme now. I felt a fresh wave of anger at Lana. It was one thing to humiliate me, but dragging Emmy into it was unforgivable. I'm sorry, Em. I never wanted this to affect you. It's not your fault, she said, then hesitated. Is it true what Mom said about you taking the money back from her firm? It's complicated. Dad, I'm 16, not 6. Just tell me the truth. I looked at my daughter, so young but trying so hard to be adult about this mess. She deserved honesty. Your mom asked me to invest in her firm, $20 million from the inheritance I got when Grandpa died. I said yes because I wanted to support her dream. But she didn't tell me she was planning to divorce me, or that she was having an affair with her business consultant. So yes, I pulled the money. Emmy nodded slowly. Good. Good? Dad, she humiliated you in front of everyone. She deserved to get screwed over. Emmy, no. I'm serious. What she did was cruel, and Miles is a creep. That got my attention. What do you mean? The way he looks at me, and at Mom's friends, and basically any woman under 30. He gives me the ick. I made a mental note to have a conversation with Miles about appropriate boundaries, the kind of conversation that might involve my fists in his face. Are you staying with Mom? For now, but I hate it. Her new apartment is all white and cold like a doctor's office. And Miles is there all the time, acting like he owns the place. You know you can stay here whenever you want. I know. She smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her in weeks. Can I ask you something? Shoot, are you planning something? Because you have that look. What look? The same look you get when you're working on a really complicated engine problem. Like you're figuring out how all the pieces fit together. Smart kid. Too smart, maybe. I'm just trying to understand what happened, I said. Why your mom did what she did. Because she's selfish, Emmy said matter-of-factly. She always has been. She just hid it better before. After Emmy left, I went back to my research. I'd found something interesting about Miles's consulting business. Specifically, how he'd been paid by his previous clients. Cash payments, offshore accounts, a web of shell companies that made it hard to track where the money was actually going. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging or you'll regret it. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. If Miles thought anonymous threats would scare me off, he clearly didn't understand who he was dealing with. The next morning, I drove to Ray's gym. It was early, before the usual crowd of cops and firefighters showed up for their workouts. Ray was in the ring with a heavy bag, working out his own demons. You look like crap, he said when he saw me. Feel like it too. We need to talk. I told him about Miles's business history, the restraining order, the threatening text. Ray listened without interrupting, his face getting darker with each detail. "So what's the plan?" he asked when I finished. "I need to get into Miles's apartment, see what else I can find. That's breaking and entering. Only if I get caught." Ray shook his head. "Jake, I've known you for 30 years. You're a lot of things, but you're not a criminal. Maybe it's time I learned. Or maybe there's a better way." He unwrapped his hands, thinking. "My cousin Danny works for the property management company that handles those luxury condos downtown. He owes me a favor." "What kind of favor?" "The kind that gets you a master key in a 30-minute window when the security guard takes his dinner break." 2 hours later, I was standing in Miles Brennan's apartment, and it was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive furniture, abstract art, a kitchen that had never been used for actual cooking. The kind of place that looked like a magazine spread and felt like a hotel room. But it was the home office that interested me. Financial documents scattered across an expensive desk, business cards from companies I'd never heard of, and a laptop that was, unfortunately, password protected. What I could access was more interesting than I'd hoped. Bank statements showing regular large deposits from offshore accounts, contracts with companies that existed only on paper, and most incriminating of all, a folder labeled LM Project, Lana Morrison. Inside the folder were detailed financial projections for Morrison and Associates, including a timeline for asset liquidation and partnership dissolution. There were also printouts of my own financial information, bank accounts, investment portfolios, the estimated value of my business. Miles hadn't just stolen my wife, he'd been planning to steal everything else too. I photographed everything with my phone, then put the documents back exactly where I'd found them. As I was leaving, I noticed something else, a framed photo on the nightstand next to his bed. Miles and Lana at some fancy restaurant, looking like the perfect power couple. But it wasn't the photo that caught my attention. It was what was behind it, a small key, the kind that opens safety deposit boxes. I pocketed the key and left the apartment, my mind already working on the next phase of my plan. Miles wanted to play games? Fine. But he was about to learn that I'd been fixing broken things a lot longer than he'd been breaking them. And some things, once you knew how they worked, were surprisingly easy to take apart. The safety deposit box key led me to First National Bank, where a helpful clerk named Susan remembered Miles from his frequent visits. A little charm, a fake story about being his business partner, and a forged power of attorney that Ray's cousin had helped me create got me access to box 247. Inside, I found exactly what I'd hoped for. Contracts, financial records, and correspondence that painted a clear picture of Miles Brennan's business model. He was running a sophisticated con game, using his consulting business as a front for what amounted to corporate theft. His method was elegant in its simplicity. He'd target successful businesses with vulnerable owners, usually women going through personal transitions, like divorce or the death of a spouse. He'd offer his services as a consultant, seduce the owner if necessary, gain access to their financial information, and then systematically drain their assets through a network of shell companies and offshore accounts. Lana wasn't his first victim. She wasn't even his second or third. The documents showed at least 6 other women over the past 3 years. All of them successful professionals, all of them left financially ruined when Miles moved on to his next target. The restraining order from Jennifer Walsh suddenly made more sense. She'd figured out what he was doing, but apparently not soon enough to save herself. I photographed everything, put the originals back, and drove to my shop to think. This was bigger than just revenge now. Miles was a predator, and if I didn't stop him, Lana wouldn't be his last victim. But first, I needed to deal with a more immediate problem. Joel Patterson had shown up at my shop with a tow truck. "I'm here for my Corvette," he announced like he was doing me a favor. "It's not ready," I said, for the 3rd time that week. "I told your wife, I don't care if it's ready. I want it out of here." "How?" There was something desperate in his voice, something that made me curious. "Joel, what's this really about?" "Just load the car, Jake. I'll pay for the work you've done." "The work I've done amounts to completely disassembling a $60,000 car. If you take it now, you're throwing that money away." "That's my choice." I studied his face. Joel had always been an A, but he wasn't stupid. There had to be a reason he wanted his car back in pieces. "This is about last night, isn't it?" I said. "About the divorce." "Everything's about the divorce now, Jake. Haven't you figured that out yet?" "What's that supposed to mean?" Joel looked around the shop, at the cars in various stages of restoration, at the business I'd built with my own hands. You really don't get it, do you? You embarrassed some very important people at that party. People don't forget that. What people? The kind of people who can make life difficult for someone like you. Someone like me. Someone who depends on the goodwill of the community to stay in business. The threat was clear enough. Play ball, or watch my business die a slow death as clients disappeared and suppliers found excuses not to work with me. Load the car, car, I said finally. Joel smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Smart choice? After he left with his disassembled Corvette, I sat in my office and made a list of everyone who'd canceled orders or stopped doing business with me since the party. 12 names so far, including some clients I'd worked with for years. This wasn't just about Lana and Miles anymore. This was about a whole network of people who decided I was a liability. Someone to be discarded now that I was no longer useful. Well, if they wanted to play hardball, I was ready to step up to the plate. I started with Miles's previous victims. Jennifer Walsh, the real estate agent with the restraining order, was surprisingly willing to talk once I explained who I was and what I'd found. He's a sociopath, she said over coffee at a diner outside town. Charming, intelligent, completely without conscience. He destroyed my business, my reputation, my savings. I lost everything. How did he do it? Slowly, carefully. First, he seduced me, made me feel like I was the most important thing in his world. Then he started asking about my business, offering advice, suggesting improvements that always seemed to benefit his consulting company more than mine. And you didn't realize what was happening? Jennifer laughed bitterly. You have to understand, he's very good at this. He makes you feel like you're partners, like you're building something together. By the time I realized what was happening, he'd already transferred most of my assets to accounts I couldn't access. What about the other women? There were at least 5 that I know of. We've tried to stay in touch, support each other, but Miles is careful to choose victims who won't be believed if they try to expose him. Meaning we're all women who have been painted as bitter ex-girlfriends or unstable business owners who made bad decisions. Who's going to believe us over a charming consultant with impeccable references? She had a point, but she also had something Miles probably didn't know about. Documentation. Bank records, emails, contracts that showed the pattern of his behavior across multiple victims. What would you say to the idea of exposing him publicly, I asked. I'd say it's about time someone with the resources to do it properly got involved. That evening, I called a meeting with Ray and 2 other friends I trusted. Danny Kowalski, Ray's cousin who worked in property management, and Mike Santos, who owned a small but successful construction company and had somehow avoided getting caught up in the boycott of my business. Here's what we know, I said, spreading the documents across Ray's kitchen table. Miles Brennan is a professional con man who targets successful women, seduces them, gains access to their finances, and then systematically loots their businesses. And your wife is his latest victim, Mike said. My soon-to-be ex-wife, I corrected, but yes. So what's the plan? Danny asked. We expose him, publicly, completely, and in a way that makes it impossible for him to continue operating. How? I smiled, and I could see from their expressions that Emmy was right. I did have a look when I was working out a complicated problem. We're going to give the people of this town a show they'll never forget. The annual Founders Day Festival was 3 weeks away, and it was perfect for what I had in mind. The whole town would be there. Families, business owners, city officials, everyone who mattered in our little community. Including, I was certain, Lana and Miles, who wouldn't be able to resist the opportunity to network and show off their new relationship. But first, I needed to set the stage. I started with social media. Nothing direct, nothing that could be traced back to me, but a carefully orchestrated campaign of anonymous tips and leaked information. Photos of Miles with his previous victims, copies of business records showing the pattern of financial manipulation, testimonials from the women he'd destroyed. The beauty of small-town gossip is that it spreads like wildfire, especially when it's juicy enough to be entertaining. Within a week, people were talking about Miles Brennan and his consulting business. Nothing that rose to the level of formal accusations, just enough doubt and suspicion to make people start asking questions. Lana, predictably, went into damage control mode. She called me twice, demanding that I stop spreading lies about Miles. I played dumb, told her I didn't know what she was talking about, suggested maybe she should look more carefully at who she was trusting with her business. Jake, I know this is you, she said during our second conversation. You're trying to destroy my relationship because you can't accept that I've moved on. Lana, I accepted that you'd moved on the night you served me divorce papers at your office party. What I can't accept is watching you get scammed by a professional con man. Miles has done this before. At least 6 times that I can prove. He targets successful women, seduces them, gains access to their finances, and then disappears with their money. You're not special, Lana. You're just his latest mark. She hung up on me, but I could hear the doubt in her voice. Good. Doubt was a start. The next phase required help from Jennifer Walsh and the other victims. They were hesitant at first. Miles had done a thorough job of destroying their credibility along with their finances. But when I showed them the evidence I'd gathered and explained my plan, they agreed to participate. What exactly do you want us to do? Asked Sarah Chen, a marketing consultant from Albany who'd lost her business to Miles 2 years earlier. I want you to come to our Founders Day festival. All of you. I want you to be visible, to be ready to tell your stories when the time comes. And when will that be? You'll know. The final piece of the puzzle was the most delicate. I needed to get Miles and Lana to the festival, and I needed them to feel confident enough to make a public appearance together. That required making them think they'd won. I had Joel Patterson deliver the message. He showed up at my shop on a Thursday afternoon looking pleased with himself. Jake, I've got a proposition for you. I'm listening. There's a group of us, business owners, professionals, who think this whole situation has gotten out of hand. The divorce, the gossip, the way it's affecting the community. And we think it's time to put it behind us. Move forward. Let bygones be bygones. I almost laughed. What exactly are you proposing? A public reconciliation at the Founders Day Festival, you and Lana shaking hands, wishing each other well, showing the community that you can be adults about this. And in exchange, your business relationships get back to normal. The boycott ends, you get your life back. It was perfect. They wanted me there, wanted me visible and compliant, probably planning to use the opportunity to further humiliate me. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. I'll think about it, I said. Don't think too long. This is a limited time offer. That night, I called Jennifer Walsh. It's happening, I said. This Saturday at the festival. Are you ready? We're ready. Jake, are you sure about this? Once we do this, there's no going back. There was no going back the night Lana served me divorce papers in front of half the town. This is just finishing what she started. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright, perfect festival weather. I got to the park early, ostensibly to help set up, but really to make sure everything was in place. The main stage was positioned perfectly, visible from every corner of the park, with excellent acoustics that would carry a speaker's voice to the farthest food booth. Ray found me checking the sound system for the 3rd time. You nervous? Terrified, I admitted, but also excited. You know that feeling you get right before a big fight? When you know you're either going to win big or get knocked out? Yeah, I know the feeling. He clapped me on the shoulder. Just remember what I taught you about timing. Wait for your opening, then make it count. By noon, the park was packed. Families with kids, teenagers that trying to look cool, older folks catching up on gossip. The whole community was there, just like I'd hoped. I spotted Lana and Miles near the beer tent, holding court with a group of lawyers and city officials. Lana was wearing a sundress that probably cost more than most people's rent, and Miles looked like he'd stepped off a yacht. They were the picture of success and sophistication. Jennifer Walsh and the other victims were scattered throughout the crowd, invisible to everyone except me. They looked nervous but determined, ready to play their parts when the time came. At 2 o'clock, Mayor Davidson took the stage to deliver his annual Founders Day address. It was the usual small-town political speech, thanking volunteers, celebrating local businesses, looking forward to a bright future, but then he surprised me. Before I finish, he said, I'd like to acknowledge that our community has been through some challenges recently. Disagreements between neighbors, business disputes, personal conflicts that have affected all of us. I felt a chill. This wasn't part of the plan. That's why I'm pleased to announce that 2 of our prominent citizens have agreed to put their differences behind them and show us all how to move forward with grace and dignity. Jake Morrison, Lana Morrison, would you please join me on stage? The crowd applauded, but it was the polite applause you give when you're not sure what's happening but feel like you should participate. I looked across the park and saw Lana staring at me, her expression unreadable. This was it, my moment. I could walk away, disappear into the crowd, let them have their public relations victory. Or I could step onto that stage and finish what I'd started. I thought about Emmy, embarrassed at school because her parents' drama had become public entertainment. I thought about the clients who'd abandoned me, the suppliers who'd cut me off, the friends who'd decided I was too much of a liability to associate with. I thought about Miles Brennan, professional predator, getting ready to destroy another woman's life while the whole community applauded. I walked toward the stage. The walk to the stage felt like a mile, every eye in the park following my progress. I could hear whispers, speculation about what I was going to say, whether I'd make another scene or finally accept my defeat gracefully. Mayor Davidson handed me the microphone with a nervous smile. Jake, would you like to say a few words about moving forward? I looked out at the crowd, hundreds of faces, some curious, some hostile, some sympathetic. I found Emmy near the front, her expression worried but supportive. Ray gave me a barely perceptible nod. Thank you, Mayor Davidson, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the park. Moving forward is exactly what I want to talk about. I could see Lana at the edge of the stage, her face tight with anxiety. Miles was beside her, his confident smile starting to waver as he realized something wasn't going according to plan. 3 weeks ago, my wife served me divorce papers at her law firm's opening party, I continued, in front of half this community. It was humiliating, devastating, and completely unexpected. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the gracious reconciliation they'd been promised. But you know what? It was also educational, because it taught me something important about the people I thought I knew, the community I thought I belonged to. I paused, letting the tension build. It taught me that some people will smile to your face while planning to stab you in the back. It taught me that reputation and money matter more than truth and loyalty. And it taught me that sometimes the only way to protect yourself and the people you care about is to fight back. Jake, Mayor Davidson said nervously, perhaps we should... Let me finish, I said, not taking my eyes off the crowd, because this community needs to know the truth about Miles Brennan. I saw Miles start forward, but Ray and Danny had positioned themselves strategically. He wasn't going anywhere. Miles Brennan isn't just my wife's new boyfriend. He's a professional con man who has spent the last 3 years systematically destroying successful women's lives and businesses. And I can prove it. The crowd erupted in surprised chatter. Lana's face went white. Jennifer Walsh, would you please come up here? Jennifer emerged from the crowd and walked to the stage. She looked terrified but determined. Jennifer, tell these people what Miles Brennan did to your business. She took the microphone with shaking hands. Miles seduced me, gained my trust, and then stole everything I'd worked for. My real estate business, my savings, my reputation. He left me with nothing but debt and a restraining order that he's violated multiple times. That's one victim, I said, taking the microphone back. Sarah Chen, would you join us? Sarah walked to the stage, followed by 3 other women. Each of them told their story: seduction, manipulation, financial destruction. The crowd listened in stunned silence as the pattern became clear. 5 women, I said when they'd finished. Emma's successful businesses destroyed, hundreds of thousands of dollars stolen. And my wife was going to be number 6. Lana finally found her voice. This is ridiculous. Jake, you're making this up because you can't accept... Can't accept what, Lana? That you chose a criminal over me? That you were so desperate to upgrade your life that you didn't bother to check if your new boyfriend was legitimate? I pulled out my phone and held it up. I have documentation. Bank records, contracts, correspondence. Everything Miles thought he'd hidden in his safety deposit box. Miles finally broke free from the crowd and rushed the stage. You broke into my apartment? You stole those documents. Did I? Or did I just follow the trail of evidence you left behind? I smiled at him, the same cold smile Lana had given me at the party. Funny how it feels to be publicly humiliated, isn't it? Jake, stop this, Lana pleaded. Whatever problems Miles might have had in the past, that doesn't what? Doesn't mean he was planning to do the same thing to you? I pulled out more papers, the ones from his apartment. These are financial projections for your law firm, Lana, including a timeline for asset liquidation and partnership dissolution. He was planning to loot your business and disappear, just like he did to these other women. Lana stared at the papers, then at Miles. Is this true? Miles's confident facade finally cracked. Lana, you have to understand, those documents are taken out of context. Is it true? She demanded. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Then Miles did what con men always do when they're cornered. He ran. He pushed through the crowd, heading for the parking lot, but Ray and Danny were ready for him. They didn't hurt him, just made sure he didn't get very far. Ladies, gentlemen, I said into the microphone, I present Miles Brennan, business consultant and professional thief. The police are on their way. The crowd erupted in chaos. People shouting, pointing, pulling out phones to record everything. In the middle of it all, Lana stood frozen on the stage, staring at the documents in her hands. Jake, she said quietly, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I know you didn't, I said. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something like pity for her. That's what makes him so dangerous. What happens now? I looked out at the crowd, at the community that had turned its back on me when I needed them most. Some of them looked ashamed now, others angry that they'd been fooled. All of them would remember this day. Now you figure out how to rebuild your life, I said, just like I did. I handed the microphone back to Mayor Davidson and walked off the stage. Emmy was waiting for me at the bottom of the steps. Dad, that was amazing, she said, throwing her arms around me. Was it? I feel like I just burned down half the town. Sometimes that's what it takes to clear the ground for something better. Smart kid. She was right, of course. Sometimes you have to tear down what's broken before you can build something new. As the police led Miles away and the crowd slowly dispersed, I found myself standing with Ray and the other women who'd helped expose him. What now? Jennifer asked. Now you get your lives back, I said. And maybe if we're lucky, we've prevented him from destroying anyone else's. Lana appeared beside us, looking smaller somehow than she had an hour earlier. Jake, I need to apologize. Not just for the divorce, but for how I did it. You didn't deserve that. No, I didn't. But you didn't deserve to get scammed either. Can you forgive me? I thought about it for a moment. Eventually, but not today. She nodded and walked away, probably to start the long process of untangling her business and her life from Miles Brennan's web of lies. So what's next for you? Ray asked as we watched the festival slowly return to normal. I'm going to go home, have a beer, and figure out how to rebuild my business. Think people will come back? Some will. Others won't. But that's okay. I'd rather work with people who know who I really am than people who abandon me the first time things get complicated. As we walked toward the parking lot, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. Not happiness, not satisfaction, but the quiet peace that comes from knowing you've done the right thing, even when it was hard. Miles Brennan would go to prison. Lana would have to rebuild her law firm and her reputation. The community would have to grapple with how easily they'd been manipulated by gossip and social pressure. And me? I'd go back to my shop, back to fixing things that were broken, back to the life I'd built with my own hands. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and it was mine. Sometimes that's enough. 6 months later, the 1967 Mustang Fastback gleamed under the shop lights, its candy apple red paint job reflecting my satisfied smile. It had taken 6 months to complete, longer than usual because I'd been rebuilding my business at the same time, but it was perfect. The kind of restoration that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with this work in the first place. She's beautiful, Emmy said, running her hand along the car's flank. She'd been spending more time at the shop lately, learning about engines and bodywork. Turned out she had good hands for mechanical work, and better instincts than most of my employees. She is, I agreed, and she's going to make someone very happy. Business was good again. Better than good, actually. The Founders Day incident had made me something of a local celebrity, the guy who'd exposed a con man and saved the community from a predator. New clients were calling every week, and some of my old customers had come back with sheepish apologies and expensive projects. Joel Patterson wasn't one of them. He'd tried to get his Corvette restoration finished at a shop in the next town over, but they'd botched the job badly enough that the car was now worth less than the parts I'd put into it. Karma, as they say, is a witch. Dad, there's someone here to see you, Tommy called from the office. I walked out to find Lana standing in the waiting area, looking nervous and uncertain. She'd lost weight, and there were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago, amicable in the end, with both of us just wanting to move on with our lives. "Hi, Jake," she said. "I hope it's okay that I came by." "Of course, what's up?" "I wanted to thank you for what you did at the festival, for stopping Miles before he could destroy everything. You already thanked me several times." "I know, but I also wanted to tell you something else." She took a deep breath. "I've been going to therapy trying to understand how I got so lost, how I became someone who could do what I did to you. And I realized that I never really appreciated what we had. The life we built together, the way you supported my dreams even when they took me away from yours. I was so focused on becoming someone important that I forgot I was already married to someone who mattered." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agenda, but all I saw was genuine regret. "I'm glad you're getting help," I said finally. "You deserve to be happy, Lana. Just not with me." She nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I know. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I threw away." After she left, I stood in the parking lot for a while, thinking about second chances and forgiveness and the strange ways life works out. Lana would be okay. She'd rebuilt her law firm with new partners, learned to be more careful about who she trusted. We'd never be friends, but we weren't enemies anymore either. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Walsh. "Coffee tomorrow, I have a business proposition." I smiled. Jennifer had started a new real estate company, specializing in helping small businesses find affordable space. She was smart, funny, and had survived the same kind of betrayal I had. We'd been having coffee regularly for the past 2 months, talking about business, life, and the challenge of learning to trust again. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was possibility. And after everything that had happened, possibility felt like a gift. "Dad?" Emmy appeared beside me. "You okay?" "Yeah, kiddo, I'm okay." "Good, because Mrs. Henderson is here about her husband's Camaro, and she looks like she means business." I laughed and headed back into the shop. There were cars to fix, customers to satisfy, a business to run. It was honest work, work that made sense, work that let me sleep peacefully at night. Miles Brennan was serving 3 to 5 years in state prison, his con game finally catching up with him. The women he'd victimized were slowly rebuilding their lives, stronger and wiser for the experience. And me? I was exactly where I belonged. In my shop, with grease under my fingernails, in a classic car waiting to be restored. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was a good life. An honest life. Sometimes that's enough, sometimes it's everything.